خاتم الانبیاء محمد مصطفی صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسم كل شيء ما عضاه بالفناء والعدم كما قال الله شأنه كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وعروة وثقى صلوات على محمد وآله
اللهم صل على محمد
Assalamu alaikum jamia wa rahmatullahi. Inshallah, this blessed day of Friday, this blessed day of Jumu'ah is a day of gathering for us together and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and finding the time in our busy schedules and our busy lives to get some spiritual energy to last us for the rest of the week. This ibadah and this worship of the day of Jumu'ah is no less than the worship of Hajj. It is called the Hajj al-Asghar, it is called the minor Hajj, because the reward that each one of you gets from the brothers and the sisters to leave your busy work schedules, to leave your home, and to come toward this place is equal in one hadith to the reward of performing the Hajj of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing is, what is the point and what is the purpose of getting together on this day of Jumu'ah and performing this worship together? One of the purposes of Salat al-Jumu'ah and this Khutba is to incite us, is to excite us, is to bring us toward the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and putting on the libas, wa libas al-taqwa, dhalika khayr, the clothing of taqwa, the clothing of piety, the clothing of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the best clothing that we can wear. So yes, on the day of Jumu'ah we are supposed to, it is mustahab, to perform the ghusl of Jumu'ah as well, as you know, between the subh and the zuhr prayer. And if you're not able to do so, then any time on the day of Jumu'ah. And if you're not able to do so, then also on the day of Saturday we are supposed to perform this ghusl of Jumu'ah. And it is also mustahab and recommended to wear the best clothing and to perfume yourself when you are coming for this congregational prayer. But the libas of taqwa is the one which is the greatest clothing that we can wear. It is the greatest and the best libas that we can have on ourselves, also with the best clothing that we wear. Salawat ala Muhammad wa This taqwa is having the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts, is making sure that when we come across sins, when we commit some sins or mistakes in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we immediately become aware of those sins and we ask for tawbah and we ask for repentance. And we try our best not to commit those sins again. One of the hadiths from the Aimma alayhi salatu wasalam says that the mu'min is one that when he commits the sin, he immediately tries to correct himself and does tawbah. And the fasiq is the one who commits the sin and does tawbah and has no intention of abandoning that sin, and has no intention of leaving that sin, and has no intention of putting that sin aside. So Allahu Akbar, we seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being one of those people who knows that what we are doing is wrong, who knows, who's aware that this is a sin in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who also prays and who also asks for istighfar and does tawbah, but has no intention of abandoning and leaving that action. This is what a fasiq is. And a mu'min tries his best or her best to abandon that sin and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. They might not be successful in the first attempt, they might not be successful in the second attempt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may try them. They might not be successful even after 100 times at leaving that sin. But they are trying, and they're trying their best to remove themselves from those places and from those actions and from those thoughts and from those environments, especially for the youth here, where there is sin and disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad. The second question that arises is that where do we get our role models so that we can bring ourselves in our daily lives, because it's really our daily lives, our daily actions which we do slowly and which we repeat throughout our life. These daily actions will accompany us into our graves and in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So who do we look at for our daily activities? And we see how do we make our daily and weekly schedules. Of course, Salatul Jumu'ah is one of those important things which we learn from the Al-Bayt, alayhim salatu wassalam. Amir al-Mu'min Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, in Khutba number 96 in Nahj al Balagha, very beautiful khutbah, the first part of this sermon, sermon number 96, where I recommend you to go and read this for today if you are able to. Very short, one-page khutbah, where in the beginning he's talking about his companions, and in very strong words, very harsh words, he's speaking to those people who are his followers against Muawiyah. And he says many things to them. He says that I would exchange one of them for 10 of you, because they are more united on the batil than you are united on the haqq. That your activities on the haqq are worse. You're more united and you disobey me, and they are united on the batil and they obey their commander and their leader. These are the type of people that Amir al-Mu'mineen had. But in the last section of that beautiful khutbah, Amir al-Mu'mineen describes who should be the leader, and he describes what our duties are toward the true leadership. He says, look at the Ahlul Bayt Nabiyikum, فَالْزِمُوا سَمْتَهُمْ وَاتَّبِعُوا أَثَرَهُمْ فَلَنْ يُخْرِجَكُمْ مِنْ هُدَى. That the Ahlul Bayt, you should look toward the Ahlul Bayt and adhere to their direction, follow their footsteps, because they will never leave you and take you out of huda, or they will never take you out of guidance. لَنْ يُخْرِجَكُمْ. They will never take you out of guidance. That every act that they do, every move that they make, every direction that the Ahlul Bayt of the Holy Prophet follow, that is truly guidance. And they will never throw you into destruction. They will never take you towards an activity or an action which is bad for you or destructive. So if we are looking for khair in our daily lives, in our weekly schedules, then we always look toward the Ahlul Bayt. We learn about their sunnah, we learn about their activities, we learn about their actions, and we are consistently trying to make ourselves closer to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen says, if they sit down, then you should also sit down. وَإِن نَهَضُوا فَانْهَضُوا. And if they rise up and if they stand up, then you should also stand up. Very beautiful, very simple words, but very deep words with deep meanings. He says that if you see a place where Ahlul Bayt are sitting, of course it doesn't just mean physically sitting and physically standing like you and I are doing. It means that at a certain place, if they encounter something, if the Ahlul Bayt are quiet and silent, then you should also learn to be silent. But if there's a place where they are standing up and rising up, and they are saying something to prevent some action, then you should do the same thing. So the greatest message that we learn in these days, when the day of Arba'in is fast approaching, from Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam, is standing up against oppression, standing up against violence, standing up against crime, standing up against the removal of rights and the exploitation of everyone else across the world. So the message of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, the revolution of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, was a place to stand up, where he had the standing up and the rising up and the revolt and the action against, with his words, and then in defense of himself, against the oppression of Banu Umayyah. He went to Kufa to guide the people of Kufa, while Banu Umayyah stopped him. He did not go to Kufa to make a revolt or ask for power, no. He went to Kufa to guide those people who were asking for guidance. And when he reached there, he realized that these people prevented him from going toward guidance. And they started attacking him. He was not the first one to attack. When they attacked him, it was wajib upon him to do a defensive jihad. And that is the defensive jihad that he did. But when you see him defending himself, when you see him defending Islam, when you see him defending the truth, then do the same thing with your words and your actions, and if you can, with your entire lives, because that truly is success in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad. The second thing is, it is very important to have a certain type of balance in our lives. It is very important to have a balance in our thinking and our approach with our families and in our personal lives. If this balance is lacking, we have time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us time and opportunity to balance ourselves, to think about where we are in our lives and in our approach toward Him. And that balance means that wherever we see the Ahlul Bayt going, we go there, but we do not reach there before them. And if we see them going somewhere, we do not abandon that place. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَلَا تَسْبِقُوهُمْ فَتَذِلُّوا وَلَا تَتَأَخَّرُوا عَنْهُمْ فَتَهْلِكُوا. That do not go before the Ahlul Bayt, not move before the Ahlul Bayt. If you do that, then you will be deviating from that. So if there's some aspect, in very general and broad terms, if there's something that the Ahlul Bayt have not done at a certain time, then you look at that and you say, this is too early, or this is an activity that the Ahlul Bayt did not engage in. I will prevent myself and my family from doing this. But if there's something that you know that you are lagging behind in our deen, in our life of deen, then what we do is we try not to prevent ourselves. We try to go forward and do that activity with our deen and our faith, because if we are lagging behind where the Ahlul Bayt have commanded us to do something, then we are the ones who will be destroyed and who will reach destruction. Salawat ala The second thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen in this beautiful khutbah, number 96, is speaking about is the description of the companions of the Holy Prophet, the true ashab of the Holy Prophet. There is a misconception in the world that the followers of the Ahlul Bayt and the Shia have no respect for the ashab and they have no respect for the companions. This is a fabrication and this is not true at all. Those companions who followed the Holy Prophet, those companions who became from the Ahlul Bayt, they are part of the Ahlul Bayt and they are part of the ashab of the Holy Prophet. We love them and we respect them because their activities and their actions made them from the Ahlul Bayt of the Holy Prophet. What do we see in the battle of Khandaq, the battle of the Moat, where Salman al-Farsi comes and he gives the advice. He says, where I come from, it is best for you to dig a moat or a khandaq around your encampment, and when you do that, the enemy will not be able to come with their horses. And this is the strategy that the Holy Prophet followed, and this is the strategy that brought victory to the Muslimin, correct? But when this happened, all the credit came back to Salman, because he was the one, Salman al-Farsi, who was the one who gave the idea. And the Muhajirun and the Ansar were competing. They said, no, we should get the credit also because Salman is from the Muhajirun. And the Ansar said, no, we should get the credit also because he's our guest and he came with the Holy Prophet, for example. And he joined us. So there was a competition between two different groups. asking for Salman to join them. And Salman was standing in the middle, and the Holy Prophet arrived, and he said to Salman, Salman, innaka minna Ahlul Bayt. He said, Salman, you are from us, the Ahlul Bayt. So this companion of the Holy Prophet, who was not Masoom, who was not born Masoom, has joined the Ahlul Bayt. Salman, you are from us, Ahlul Bayt, because of your piety and your actions and your understanding of the deen and your obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So subhanAllah, we see that these companions who Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing now are those ones who have truly understood the deen and who have followed the words and the guidance of the Ahlul Bayt. Salawat ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
He says, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ أَصْحَابَ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ فَمَا أَرَى أَحَدًا يُشْبِهُهُم مِّنكُمْ. He says, verily I have seen the companions of the Holy Prophet, but I do not find anyone from you resembling them. Now he's addressing his companions in the battlefield against Muawiyah, and he says, they began the day with dust on their hair and their face in the hardship of life, and passed the night in prostration and standing in prayers. That the Ashab of the Holy Prophet, the two companions, they stood up in the morning with dust on their faces, seeking the life that they need for this world, seeking the rizq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided. Either that was through the provisions that they would get by working, by trading, by farming, whatever else, and they would give that in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would give whatever they had to the Holy Prophet so that he would accept from them, and they would get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen says they passed the night, they passed the complete night, sujjadan wa qiyamah, in sajda and qiyamah. So the companions of the Holy Prophet, they passed the night in worship and obedience and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the two companions who learned from the Holy Prophet and who followed the guidance that Amir al-Mu'mineen just pointed out from the Ahlul Bayt. They did not reject the Ahlul Bayt, but they respected and they loved and they followed and they admired and they imitated the Ahlul Bayt. These are the companions that he is describing. And then he says, sometimes at night they put their forehead and sometimes their cheek on the ground in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these brave men, ashidda al-kuffar ruhama bainahum, these brave men and women who were very strict against the kuffar when it came for time to distinguish between haqq and batil, and who were very soft between themselves. At night, they're humble in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They pass their nights. How is it that we pass our nights? Sleeping comfortably. But they do not do this. They pass their nights sometimes putting their foreheads and sometimes putting their cheeks in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to show their humbleness and to show their position in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the two companions. And then he says, with the recollection of the resurrection and the qiyamah, it seemed as though they were standing on live coals. Meaning that when they would hear from the Holy Prophet, or when they would recite one of the verses of the Holy Quran, which mentioned the qiyamah and the punishment, it was as if they were standing on live coals. Coals or fire. If you can imagine somebody who's standing upon the coals, upon fire, is that person comfortable? No, that person is very uncomfortable. Because the mention of that fire makes them think about the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are fearful and they seek refuge from that punishment, and they stop themselves and they prevent themselves from committing sins, and they try to acquire this libas of taqwa. This is what they spend their lives in. This is what they spend their activity in. These are the true companions of the Lord. And then he says, it seemed that in between their eyes there were signs like knees of goats resulting from long sajda and prostrations. And when the ashab and the companions of the Holy Prophet, they used to worship, it was as if that their foreheads, Amir al-Mu'mineen uses this frequently. He says knees of goats, which basically means that it is something that bulges, something that comes out of their forehead, that their skin has become hardened because of their long sajdas to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at night. And they're seeking of forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioned, their eyes flowed freely and their shirts became drenched. They trembled for fear of punishment and hope of reward as the tree trembles on the day of stormy wind. خوفا من العقاب ورجاء للثواب. That the companions of the Holy Prophet, they would hope for mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the paradise and the hole and the rivers were mentioned in the Holy Quran, and the Holy Prophet used to mention this in front of them, they would tremble like trees trembling in the wind. The same men who were brave on the battlefield, the same men and women who would go out and seek sustenance and livelihood, the same men and women who would give everything they had for the sake of Islam, for the sake of spreading Islam, these same men and women used to follow the Ahlul-Bayt, and when the hellfire was mentioned, they would be fearful and tremble like trees in the wind from the fear of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would be hopeful for the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would seek the thawab and they would seek the reward that they would. So my brothers and sisters, in these days of Arba'een and commemoration of one of the largest gatherings of human beings on this earth, we have to look into our own selves and see who is it that we are following? Who is our role model? Everyone has a role model, either we are aware of that or not, and we are trying to teach our families and our relatives and our community those values, and we are trying to take them toward those role models. This khutbah number 96 of Ahlul Nahj al Balagha certainly describes for us the true companions of the Holy Prophet, and how is it that we should treat and deal with the Ahlul-Bayt of the Holy Prophet. When they prevent us from something, we should stop ourselves from doing it. When they command us towards something, we should do that. And however they dealt with something, we should try to deal with those things in our personal lives and our social lives in that same way. Salawat ala Muhammad. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموت كتاب الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. العصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم. سبحان من سبق رحمته غضبه وبسط اليدين بالرحمة. سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا إلا دون وسعها وعفى عن السيئات ولم يجاز بها. سبحان من لا يزداد على معاصي العباد إلا كرما وجودا ولا كثرة الذنوب إلا عفوا وصفا. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف على العباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه. ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة. ألا قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكل عشرين فيه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وآله وعلى سيدة النساء العالمين وبدعة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين شهيد كربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان ماهي آثار الدنيا والطغيان مدرسة الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا من نظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم افعل بنا ما انت اهله ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن اهله بجاه محمد واله المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم اجمعين.
اللهم صل على محمد
الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. Very briefly, for the second part of this khutbah, I want to bring to your attention some of the events that are happening in this world, and we should be very much aware, because this day of Jumu'ah is not just a day of worship and ibadah, it is also a day of gathering, where we become aware of each other's activities, where we become aware of the state of the Muslimin in this world, and where we become aware of those things that we can do to improve the human condition everywhere through the teachings of Islam, which are the best tools which are provided to us. The image of Islam, salawat ala Muhammad wa alayhi. The image of Islam in this world, as you see, according to the media and other news outlets, has been corrupted and continues to be corrupted. But very recently, a very good thing happened in the world of religion and in Europe. And I want to share that with you. Just a few days ago, there was a conference held in the Vatican by the Catholic Church, where the Pope and other religious leaders got together, and the theme of that conference was to end modern-day slavery. Which means that there are many people who are sold into all kinds of slavery, be that for physical pleasure, be that for work in this world. When we say slavery, we always think of the past, but there are many people from different countries, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, who are sold across the world, still, because there's a need for labor, there's a need for work, and the working conditions, even in some Middle Eastern countries, in some so-called Muslim countries, are very horrible. So this conference was held by religious leaders, and the intention of that conference was to remove this modern-day slavery. And I'm very happy to share that some of our ulama, some of our maraji from the cities of Karbala and Najaf participated themselves in this conference. You can go and search this conference against slavery in the Vatican. It was 3 or 4 days ago, and it's very popular in social media right now. And they issued statements from the school of Al-Bayt and from the Muslim population in general about this, about the fact that Islam does not believe in this concept of modern-day slavery. Islam is against all kinds of humiliation. Islam is against all kinds of oppression. Islam is against the enslavement of other people for economic needs and for other kinds of activities. And Islam is calling for human equality and human justice. And if someone brings up this topic when you have conversations with your colleagues in French online or in school or at work, then you can mention that some of the leaders of the school of Al-Bayt have issued statements against this concept of slavery and have spoken about human freedom and this concept of generosity. Salawat ala Muhammad wa alayhi. The second thing is the activities that are happening in this country are, in some cases, we think we live in a very modern and very advanced society. It is better than other places. But this concept of race, this idea of racism still persists. And there are many protests going on across in this country, because recently 2 or 3, and more than that, people of a certain race were killed by the police force, and people are protesting the oppression that is being exercised by this police force. And it all comes back to this concept of race and racism. One race thinks that the other race is not worth anything, and that race tries to oppress this other race. It is very sad that in a country like this, the governor of a certain state declares an emergency because of the riots that are happening because of racism. When you come to Islam, especially to the school of Al-Bayt, we realize that there is no room for the concept of racism in our society. If you look at the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, and someone did this online, they traced the ethnic groups, where do the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt come from? You see that the first few Imams are Arab, of course. Then you have the mixing of Iranian and Persian blood. And then you have the mixing with African and Berber blood. So the Imam of our time himself has African and Berber ancestry. Do we have any discrimination against this? Of course not. He is created from the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. And we accept him because of that. We look at taqwa and iman. We do not look at which race is better than that. So it's really something pathetic that is happening in our modern and postmodern society, and we should be aware that Islam does not condone and Islam does not accept any room for racial discrimination. Salawat ala Muhammad wa alayhi. Finally, we raise our hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, to accept our amal, to guide us toward the light of Ahlul-Bayt, to remove from us all kinds of conceptions that hold us back from the Ahlul-Bayt and their path, and to make us and our families the companions of the Imam of our time. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
اللهم صل على